So hi, welcome to End Credit Reviews on episode of After the Credits on End Credit Reviews. This is Tyler from End Credit Reviews.
And Steven from Steven Lawson Studios.
Yes, and we haven't done a top 10 video in a long time where basically I do a top 10 thing and then Steven gives his 2 cents. So basically, have you ever watched a movie and it was like, oh, it's actually pretty good? And then somewhere it kinda goes downhill.
Nosedives. Yep, I've had plenty of those experiences.
Yeah, definitely. So basically, these are movies that I'm not saying that these are bad movies necessarily, but they start off pretty promising. I mean, there are probably some movies that start off not so good, but they got better throughout
hmm
in a way. But anyway, this is just my 2 cents on these, and I'll explain why. And Steven again will give his 2 cents on it.
Sure.
Okay, so at number 10 on my list is Spider-Man 3. Now, Spider-Man 3 started off pretty good. I mean, things were actually going good for Peter Parker for once in his life. And we also see, like, Harry Osborn getting, like the Green Goblin kind of, like, what was it? The gas kind of thing?
Oh yeah, the Green Goblin gas or whatever to.
Yeah, formula. And then he pretty much hunts down, like, Peter Parker and he tries to kill him. That was kind of cool. And then the movie really starts to go downhill as soon as it was like, oh, Peter, this guy didn't kill your uncle. This guy killed your uncle.
Yep.
All right, first of all, that was in the comics. Second, that pretty much was kind of a ripoff of the first Tim Burton Batman movie where they made the Joker character the killer of Bruce Wayne's parents, even though in the comics that wasn't him. That was just in the movie, just to give another reason to hate the Joker. And what I really dislike about that revelation is that it really took away from all the guilt and drama from the first movie. Because in the first Spider Man movie, the whole thing about with great power comes great responsibility, Peter choosing to be selfish and letting that guy get away would show, like, okay, your uncle would have been alive if you weren't selfish in this moment. But basically, now they're saying, okay, if even if you stop the guy, your uncle probably would have died. It just really took away a lot from it, which I really didn't like. It was a betrayal in a way. They didn't really think that through when they did that plot twist revelation, I think, in a way. It also didn't help with kind of emo Peter, the WTF dance scene that happened in the middle of the film. Even though it was kind of like, if you think about it, he was trying to upstage Mary Jane in a way. But then barely any screen time with Venom in the movie. But don't worry, he's getting his own movie that somehow is not connected to the MCU.
Right. No, I overall agree that this is one. I don't think it's a weird case because to me, it wasn't like it just fell to the bottom downhill. To me, it's like
Yeah, I
it
agree.
it went rocky road. So like it went up and then up a little down. And I think towards the end, it definitely got a bit better, in terms of like the big action piece. But definitely, I agree that this was one of those cases where overall you kind of just got a meh movie because of some of the ridiculous changes that didn't make tonal sense for the other films prior. And I agree, yeah. Venom, I think he may get a little bit too much flack compared to, you know, what a lot of people on the internet say about Spider-Man 3. Oh, it's terrible. I'm like, well, no, it was still fine, but it ultimately wasn't, a complete dumpster fire. But I agree that definitely there were some missteps, and Tyler addressed the big two, especially in terms of the with great power comes great responsibility thing, but also the aesthetic of, emo Peter dancing down the street. That will be a cringe meme forever, I think.
Yeah, I mean, well, to be honest in that, I still think this is better than the Amazing Spider-Man movies because those movies weren't good at all in retrospect. I mean, yeah, this movie did have its moments and that, I mean, I wish there would have been a Spider-Man 4 just to kind of patch things up a bit
Agreed.
in a way, but also the part where, like, Sandman shows up, like his big sand form, that felt like a Scooby-Doo movie.
It did.
Like,
Yeah.
definitely. I'm like, okay, yeah, and they kind of made J. Jonah Jameson too much of like a punchline, kind of like how people complained about General Hux in The Last Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I agree.
Hint, hint. Okay, so now we get to number 9 on the list, and that is Up. Now, I know this is a very controversial pick here, folks, but let me explain. The movies, like the first, 15, 20 minutes of the movie are excellent. I really like the beginning of this movie, where we show basically the, two, the main guy and the, girl that he grows up with, and they get married, and it's so sad when basically she finds out that she can't have kids. So my question is, how come she couldn't adopt any kids, to solve that? But basically, the movie really goes downhill when they go to the jungle. And in a way, it's kind of similar how people would argue with Full Metal Jacket, some would argue that the movie went downhill as soon as they got to Vietnam and left the training facility, in a way. But basically, the big issue I have with this movie is mainly the whole surprise villain cliche when it was young and sadly wasn't killed off before it can get too big and powerful. But also it's like, oh, this guy wants to kidnap this bird even though he doesn't want to kill the bird. He wants to bring it back to civilization to prove that it exists. So what do these two think is the morally right thing to do? They kill the old man and steal his blimp and his dogs. Yeah, this movie does fall flat on its face for having any morals, if you think about it. In fact, the whole thing about, the lead dog having, a high-pitched kind of voice for comedic stuff, where they're saying, it's like, oh, yeah, when he's, it's kind of he's supposed to be this tough, intimidating dog, and he has this high-pitched voice. I'm like, someone making a YouTube poop back in 2009 basically could do that, and no one's given that nominated for Best Picture.
Yeah. No, I overall, I can understand where you're coming from. To be honest, I haven't actually seen the whole movie of Up. I've seen, I think, the beginning half an hour, and then I saw the ending. So I ended up seeing who the villain was, but without the, surprise thing at the end. And, yeah, I mean, so basically, I'm saying that my 2 cents on this may only be worth 1 cent. But, basically, from what I did see of it, I agree that it's largely overrated, especially for a Pixar film. And I definitely agree that, I like the dogs, like you were talking about. I don't think I saw much of the jungle part that you're talking about, but I definitely think that this was one of those overrated things, and a example of an overrated, especially kids movies, because I feel like a lot of people just up until recently especially have not had the balls to say, no, that kids movie sucked. Especially when it came to Pixar or Disney, they didn't have the cojones to say, sorry kids, you're objectively wrong on this.
The closest thing was the Cars movies.
Right, exactly. And even that they weren't a dick about. They were just like, well, they weren't the best.
Yeah.
But,
yeah, in addition, what kind of boggles my mind thinking about it, between Beauty and the Beast and this movie, there have been far better animated movies than this one. We had Aladdin, The Nightmare Before Christmas, Batman Mask of the Phantasm, The Iron Giant, The Lion King, The Incredibles, the first 2 Toy Story movies. Those weren't nominated for Best Picture, but this was?
Yep.
It's like, come on, were you asleep at the wheel?
Yeah, I think the best, to be honest, I think the main memorable thing from it that I know from people is, that montage of him and his wife getting older and then dying. To me, I think that's Up in a nutshell for most people. For what they really remember afterward from it.
If you get past that, it's definitely doesn't really have much of that impact. Yeah, just cut that out. It's like, oh, wait, oh, eh.
Right. But, yeah, no, from what I understand of it, and again, I haven't seen the whole thing, but I've seen probably about a third to a half of it just disjointed, and I would agree, it definitely strikes me as one of those, overrated.
All right, so at number 8, basically, you don't need you can basically have Dory's memory loss to figure out what my number 8 pick is, of course, that I hinted at.
Yep.
And that would be Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi. Now, this is a movie that started off pretty good. There's a lot of good action scenes, even though it was kind of questionable with the Yo Mama joke in a way, and Hux now being a punchline for some reason. But the movie really went downhill, kind of when Luke threw away the lightsaber. But it really happened. It was really relevant, not elephant. It was. I'm sorry, but what I'm about to say is just so stupid. It's making me speak gibberish in a way. The Leia flying in space moment.
My God. That was so horrible.
Yeah, and you were even doing like this whole "what the hell am I watching" like pose. You were like you were doing like this kind of thing with your arms up during that scene. Like, okay, people, you're being serious now.
Right.
And it didn't help with the whole like, oh, am I Darth Plagueis? Oh, I die. And then also Casino Planet, nonsense that should have been cut from the movie. And during that moment where they're like riding through the Casino Planet with all the lights and that, riding those like discount the Last Guardian creatures. And I was thinking to myself, I even thought of this too when I rewatched this movie for a second time when it came to home video. I'm like, am I watching a Star Wars movie? Because that's what really did not feel like Star Wars.
Yeah, I got you. No, in retrospect, I don't think I'm quite as hard on this movie as Tyler is, but I definitely acknowledge this was not what it was meant to be. Like, having Abrams do the first one and then having this douchebag take over and just
purposely
we're
making
gonna rip down all the old expectations, and that's the central thing. It's like
purposely making a divisive movie.
Right, and I'm just like, it's one thing if you pull down the stuff in a positive way, like old Star Wars cliches, but not if you invent new ones that are even worse, okay? Like, you've got to understand that what The Last Jedi did was like, hey guys, remember the old Star Wars movies? Take a runny dump on them and light it on fire.
Yeah,
that's basically what happened.
There are probably more yes men with this movie than there was with the Star Wars prequels. I mean, I'm surprised no one has made like a billboard sign with George Lucas smiling and saying, "Miss me yet?"
And another thing that I quite frankly think a lot of my friends that are on the left will not have the cojones to own up to, but I think a lot of the reason, they may not admit it, but especially behind why Hollywood is like, no, this was a great movie, guys, come on, is clearly some progressive shoehorning that didn't work.
All the men are fools, or, oh, I don't know what to do, and all the women are like, oh, we know everything.
Right.
This is like some kind of typical run-of-the-mill commercial you would see for furniture or something like that, pretty much what it is.
But to me, the most egregious wrongdoing of The Last Jedi was they made Luke a cuck. They made Luke Skywalker an absolute cuck. And that, to any self-respecting Star Wars fan who isn't just a blatant apologist, should be like, that is bullshit. And they just, all I hear from like the mainstream people, the normies, is, I thought it was pretty good. And I'm like, to be fair, I didn't think it was terrible. I'm not going to be someone that says, oh, this is terrible, don't see it.
Yeah, me too.
But it was just like, it was ultimately just meh, especially compared to the last one where it looked like, okay, maybe we've actually got some potential here. They just completely pulled the platform out from under it. And I'm like, well, that was sad. Ultimately, I felt like towards the end, okay, at this point, I was going to say spoiler warning, but it's been like a couple of years, so at this point...
Actually, less than a year.
Okay, still, it's a big cultural piece. If you haven't seen it, you can stop listening for a split second here.
Too late.
But, yeah, but basically, like the whole Plagueis death thing that was talked about, to me that was unexpected and overall was still decent, at least, because I think we were expecting him to survive at least another movie.
And I love that sword fight scene.
Yeah, and the choreography of that fight scene was great, but so many other elements of this movie were just diarrhea.
If
and
you want to
not
find,
good.
yeah, if you want to find a way to, exceed audience's expectations correctly, look at Avengers Infinity War, look at Incredibles 2,
Yep.
play the new God of War video game, and from what I've heard, watch the new show called Cobra Kai that's on YouTube Red. People said that that also does respect the older stuff, but does stuff differently without pretty much dropping its pants and throwing some diarrhea
Right.
on it, pretty much.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with that. And while I wouldn't say it's objectively a terrible movie because of all of its decisions,
Yeah, I mean, it's
I
not as
definitely
bad.
say that it tied some heavy weights down to its ankles that make it not nearly as good as it could have been, and that's unfortunate.
Yeah,
So,
I don't think it's the worst Star Wars movie ever. I mean, I do think it's a movie that definitely, in retrospect, is not as good as I remembered it when I first saw it in theaters. It's not the worst Star Wars movie ever. I think the holiday special is worse in that.
that's the crown turd to unthrone.
The Woogie Choir half the time. Torture. George Lucas himself wants to destroy every copy of that movie, by the way, folks.
Someone
Let that
should
sink
just say
in.
that so that he can't. It's like his dying wishes that he could have gotten rid of all of them, but there's that one guy who won't sell it, and he's got it in the safe.
Yeah, it's kind of like how there's a website dedicated to destroying every copy of Shaq Fu. Hey, epic rap battle of history idea. Star Wars holiday special copies and Shaq Fu video game copies.
For sure.
If they ever come back. I don't think they were come back by this point.
Probably not.
Yeah. They started off kind of like this movie. They started off good, but then went downhill.
Absolutely.
Yeah, not as bad, but you get my point. We spent like an eternity on this one.
We did, but it was worth
A
it.
lot more than I expected. It could be its own video. All right, so at number 7 would have to be Paper Towns. Now, I don't think Steven has seen this one.
I have not.
So basically, this is based off a book, and the movie starts off pretty good, where basically this one guy likes this one girl that's kind of been a neighbor of his, but he never really knew her, and then one night she kind of says like, hey, you want to run some errands with me and do some mischief? And I actually really liked this movie during the beginning part of it, because I'm like, oh, it's actually kind of funny, but also they're kind of bonding. But then the movie goes downhill when it's like, oh, she's missing. So then him and his other friends are trying to search for her and look for her where she ran off to. And I'm like, it just became pretty boring. The whole movie should have been just these two characters kind of bonding and doing mischief around town at nighttime. That actually could have been interesting. I would have actually liked to see that movie, even though the book, it was probably like the book in a way, like that's probably how the book was like. But that's one of the rare occurrences where they should have said, no, that was questionable, let's do something different from the book.
Yeah, Tyler is right that I have not seen this, and I've only heard a little bit about it. I think I saw a trailer for it. So, honestly, I have next to nothing to say about it. He's probably right. His judgment about movies is very good. But I will say that if the background on the page here advertising Baywatch is recommended for the people who liked this movie, this is a definite sign, wipe your butt with it and throw it away. Because, yeah, the major... If that's the like interest audience that they're marketing to, that's bad.
Yeah, especially
So.
the guest celebrity they have on here is like Take 5. Maybe she should stop eating Take 5s.
Oh no! Yeah. Job of the butt here. Like,
Oh yeah, we just came off of talking about a Star Wars
we
movie.
did.
So, anything else to say about it, or
Not really. Again, I'm not very qualified for this one at all. But
all right?
yeah, I'll trust your judgment on it.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, all right. So at number 6, Matt, number 6, I just want to make sure I'm not skipping numbers.
That was 7, I think. So.
Okay, so at number 6 would have to be Batman Bad Blood, a movie that, again, I doubt Steven has seen, but I definitely seen this one. The movie starts off pretty good, where we show Batman and Batwoman fighting a bunch of villains. There's very action-packed. The movie also shows, like, I guess Robin, who's like the Damian Wayne one teaming up with like Nightwing, the first Robin, and then the movie goes downhill where it suffers from the same problem as Spider-Man 3 and Iron Man 2, where they kind of shove in way too many new characters into the film. Not only do we have Batwoman introduced in this movie, but we have Batwing, who I guess is kind of like a relative of Lucius Fox, and he has this kind of like Iron Man Batman suit on, which is weird. And it's like you easily could have erased these two characters from the movie. They should have just focused on on Nightwing and Robin to kind of form some kind of brotherly bond. Would have been more interesting. In addition to that, I just felt like the way they betrayed Talia al Ghul in this movie is like, why did they make her this evil? I mean, okay, in The Dark Knight Rises, she was kind of like that, but then again, they were doing something different with it. But her character, even the one they established in the other films related to this, was very different from her character when she had. I mean, she wasn't she wasn't like that evil, really. She was kind of like neutral ground, like wants to help, but can't help because, her father and that sort of deal. But also, at the end of the movie, I'm not kidding, Batgirl steps out of the shadows to help, Batman's team. She doesn't have any dialogue. We didn't see her character at all in any of this movie or the other movies. I'm like, what was the point of her showing up randomly?
Right.
In fact,
She exists.
in the other movies after this one that were kind of connected to it, we don't see or hear from her ever again. This, saying that she was shoehorned into the movie would be an understatement.
Mm-hmm. No, I actually did see, I think, most of this one that Tyler's talking about. And I agree overall. This was definitely one of the more disappointing animated Batman movies. Even how it looked was pretty subpar compared to other, animated DC films. But I definitely agree. Talia was a bit disappointing. The WTF showing up of Batgirl and some of the decisions and kind of... I feel like Batman also kind of was just a bit to the side, if you will, kind of like...
Too much.
Yeah, and that to me, like, anything with Batman in the name is like, okay, you better make Batman, like, the main protagonist character, because he deserves it. And this, I think, was not deserving of that, so I would agree. I'm not sure, like, if this list is a ranking, if this belongs exactly there, but...
It is.
I'm not quite sure it deserves the place where it's at, but definitely I would agree that this was one of the underwhelming DC animated films.
I mean, it's still better than Batman Ninja, and that was like, what the hell was that?
Seriously.
Krusty the Clown would say.
Yeah, no, get it? Because he, like, does martial arts stuff with the League of Shadows, so, like, the Joker's gonna be, like, a ninja now. Dumb, stop, normies.
IGN rated that at least a 9 out of 10. This made Batman Harley Quinn look like Batman Beyond Return of the Joker by comparison.
IGN can be so normie sometimes.
You can't spell ignorant without IGN, as they say. Okay, so alright, so at number 5 on the list, we should speed this up, we're kind of being too slow here. Alright, so at number 5 would be Hercules. I'm talking about the one with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Mm-hmm. This started off really good. I mean, we showed the origin of Hercules, or as we were taught in our, mythology class back in our, community college years, Heracles and that. Basically, we see, like, him doing his 12 labors, and the CGI is really impressive. But then suddenly, just snap, and it's like, oh, we're just doing a generic Hercules movie that we've seen way too many times before. In addition to that, this movie couldn't make up its mind on whether it was going to be like, oh, all this stuff is mythology stuff, or, oh, all this stuff is not real myth stuff, it's kind of fake stuff. Mm-hmm. The movie kept flip-flopping so much. It's like, make up your mind already, okay? Mm-hmm. And also, in addition to that, I'm trying what I was going to say about it. I mean, yeah, it was better than that Legend of Hercules movie that came out the same year as this one.
Not saying a lot.
But, yeah, I mean, for now, we've got the Disney one, which is probably the best we're going to get.
Yeah, for a while, definitely, at least. I saw most of this one. I don't think I quite saw all of this, because at a certain point, it was just on, like, HBO, and I'm like, okay, pass. But I can't even agree with the visuals. I think the visuals objectively the whole time were shit. And
Well, in the beginning they look good.
I can't even go that far. I think most of the time they were just pretty wretched to mediocre at best. And yeah, in terms of what he's talking about with the tonality, absolutely, it was just all over the place. So yeah, this was definitely kind of a mess. And saying it's better than the other Legend of Hercules that year, boy, that's not saying a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of reminded me a little bit of. Well, this one did it worse of Snow White and the Huntsman, where at one point they're kind of hinted at, oh, is the queen crazy or is the magic mirror like a real magical object? Even though in the movie, time and time again, we see clear evidence of magic happening and other stuff like
Right.
that, which I felt like was completely pointless and easily should have been cut from the movie.
Hmm.
I mean, yeah, nothing much to say that. I mean, we got to see Erika Shaw, that one model, she was in the film.
Hmm.
Yeah, at least we got to see her.
Wow, we love very nice. Yeah.
Yep, Steven said it better than I could. All right, so at number 4 on my list would have to be Transformers:
Ooh,
Dark
boy.
of the Moon.
Wow. Yeah, we're gonna have a strong disagreement on this one.
But let's make it quick here. Okay, so
Make
basically,
it quick. We'll see if that happens.
try, please. All right, so basically, the movie starts off pretty excellent. Where we see the big war in Cybertron. However, it was kind of iffy with like the CGI JFK that looked more stiff than in his animatronic in the Hall of Presidents. They could have couldn't use like an actor double in that, but basically they show like the space race happening. Okay, not half bad. And then for some reason, like, oh, Megan Fox is not in the movie because loose reasons and not because she says something iffy during the making of the film.
Sure.
But also we have like random cuts to black in certain scenes, and also Megatron being barely in the movie, and kind of surprise villain cliche, but also I didn't like the way they killed off, Megatron and that, and I felt like
Garbage.
the movie itself was kind of like I actually prefer Revenge of the Fallen over this one. At least that one had action I feel like was kind of better. I mean, I do think it's better than Age of Extinction. This is not the worst Transformers movie, I will say. So that's what I'll say about it, Steven.
Yeah, boy. Okay. This is my strongest disagreement by far. This is actually one of my favorite sci-fi action movies. Period. And I'm talking history.
I knew this was coming.
So this is to me like just objectively a stupid analysis, but I do have to say we do have the right to our separate opinions here.
Mm-hmm.
What I will say though is I definitely I agree with the random kind of okay, Megan Fox is out of it thing. But that happens in a lot of movies. That's happened in Marvel several times.
Yeah, definitely.
That happened with the Dark Knight series, which is my overall favorite series of anything put to film ever. So to me, that was kind of like, okay, that's just whatever. And he's got a point about the JFK thing, but to me, those are all very minute, surface level, nitpicky things that a lot of other critical hacks kind of just lambast the whole franchise over. This one, to me, got the most right of all of the films put together. And that includes the Decepticon treasonous nature, Megatron's devious ways and turning on his allies, the alliance of the Autobots with the humans, and the pure scale of war that they're capable of, as well as the final battle between Optimus, Megatron, and Sentinel. I think that is one of the best single sequences in the past 10 years combined. I absolutely love this film and couldn't disagree with this pick more, especially where it is on the list. Like past Hercules, that's a crime. But
I get you.
I definitely disagree. And this is, to me, the best Transformers film, hands down, period. And I'll probably do a review on it on my own channel at some point to correct a lot that was said here. But
Yeah, I mean, I will mildly disagree with the whole, the final battle was better than all films put together. I mean, I mean, I thought of like, okay, the chase scene in Batman Begins where he's running from the police, and the carriage, scene from Van Helsing, and different moments in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I will say that happened in the 2000s in a way, but yeah, I mean, I get where you're coming from in that.
Well, again, that's early 2000s if you want to be technical. That was all before I think 2005.
Yeah, I mean, I get
that's been more than 10
yeah.
years. But
Also, the chase scene in Casino Royale was excellent. I would
it was
say.
alright.
I thought it was awesome. I mean, actually, I think that movie is way better than Skyfall.
Yeah, we'll disagree on that one too. But
I'll probably make one on why it's criminally overrated
mhm.
in the future.
But again, yeah, this is probably going to be the main one where it's just like completely North versus South dichotomy here.
Batman vs
So-
Superman.
Right? Yeah.
All right, moving on now. All right, so now we got through the painful one here, folks. We got number 3 on my list, and that would be The Omen. I'm talking about the 2006 movie of The Omen.
Mhm.
Now, I don't know if Steven's seen this one.
I have seen this one.
Okay, so basically, well, it would have been nice to know to let me know in advance, but then I guess it's kind of spoiler, well, secret stuff
Mhm.
in a way. But I digress, folks. So basically, the movie has a really great opening where we basically show this meeting in the Vatican and various cardinals and other people high in the Vatican order, where they're saying like all these events that have been happening. Like they were showing like realistic stuff, like that one space shuttle that exploded in like 2003, I think it was,
Mhm.
and other like natural disasters are like signs of the coming of the Antichrist. I'm like, this is really good. This movie started off really good. I really love it. It's kind of chilling because it does tie into realistic stuff. And then the movie just becomes a generic story beat by story beat redo of the 1970s version, which is far better, by the way. In fact, there's really questionable scenes of directing where there's 2 times where Liev Schreiber's character is driving in the rain, and for some reason, like, the camera, like, kind of zooms in on his headlights or something. Like, is this amateur hour? This had to be second unit right here.
Right.
Who was like, oh, what do I do? I'm a sub here. What do I do? Kind of, yeah, this whole movie was just a meh film. The only reason why it exists is because they could release it on June 6, 2006, on,
Right.
666 in the date.
Edgy.
Not.
Right. No, I get you. I don't actually. This is one where I guess I see what you're saying. I don't think it belongs on this list where it does, but I guess I can kind of see where you're coming from. To me, this is similar to the whole Spider-Man 3 debacle, but I actually thought this was okay of a film. Kind of an overall decent, but I definitely respect what he's saying in terms of like it being a beat for beat remake largely of the original Omen, which was overall better. I will say, of course, because of the modern technology, some particular scenes that Tyler's talking about, like in the beginning with the natural disasters and stuff. And there's also this one where there's like a guy in a red robe. With
Yeah,
like
what
a
was
bolt-
with that?
To me, that looked fucking fantastic. I love that. That was awesome.
I don't know.
But-
that kind of looked like someone raided, Spirit Halloween store.
I
To
don't
me.
know. Like to me, that worked really well. But I will say that Liev Schreiber and like the mom and dad in this were just shit actors. Like Liev Schreiber has been decent in other things, and actually one of the things that he got most noticed in, which is unfortunate, was X-Men Origins Wolverine, and he was actually okay in that. But like.
Yeah.
This one, he was just objectively not good, and neither was the mom. And it was just like, to me, the kid was fine, and actually other elements and things that happened were legitimately pretty freaky, and the scoring to it and some of the filming, I haven't seen exactly what Tyler's talking about with the headlights in a while, so he may very well be right about that. But there, overall, I don't think, again, this belongs where it does on the list, and it's not quite as bad as Tyler's putting it out to be, but I do think...
Well, it's not really bad, really. I didn't, I'm not saying that these movies are bad
I guess so,
necessarily.
but by saying the ranking of this, it's also implying that this is like the third worst case scenario, and I'm like, This is definitely more of a top of the list, if anything, to me. But like, I guess I see what he's saying, and he's definitely right about like towards the middle to end part, especially with the two parents. It's just like, why do we care? Why do we care? Like, there were other elements I think I liked more than Tyler about this movie, but again, difference of opinion, and this is a much lighter disagreement than the last one. So
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised how much you kind of, defended this film in a way, but I mean, I do feel like, I don't remember the score to this movie that much, but I feel like it really would fail. Even if I did watch it again, I'd be like, yeah, it definitely falls really short compared to Jerry Goldsmith's score of the movie, which, by the way, he's an awesome one. He did the original, like, Twilight theme song. I mean, the Twilight Zone theme from the...
Twilight.
No. He died before that abomination existed.
Good. Well, not that he died, but
like he was spared that horrific thing. But I'm saying is that he did a Twilight Zone theme song. He did Alien, like the original Alien theme,
Did a lot
LA
of good horror
Confidential, and The Mummy, and Total Recall. Maybe the first Mission Impossible movie. I'm not so sure. All right, so at number 2 on my list would have to be Harold and Kumar Escape Guantanamo Bay. My question is, how the hell does this dumb comedy have a higher IMDb user score rating than Van Helsing does? And I know it's not even like a full star ahead, but still here. Alright, the movie starts off really good, where basically they go to the airport and they're going onto this plane, and one of the guys sneaks like a bong on board for some reason. And this one old lady's like all paranoid and thinks one of them's like a terrorist, and she's like, terrorist! And everyone freaks out in the plane, and he's like, hey, relax guys, just a bong. And one guy's like, he's got a bomb! And I thought it was kind of funny. And then they go to Guantanamo Bay, and they with ease escape it. And I'm like, okay, here, people. I thought they were jumping the shark in the first one where they rode that cheetah, panther, whatever it was, for a bit. This one really outdid it big time. You're telling me that Guantanamo Bay is the equivalent of escaping from a school, pretty much, how easily someone could walk out. It is so terrible and mildly insulting in a way. Like, you don't think people are this stupid. I think the guys who made those parody movies like Meet the Spartans and Disaster Movie, even they would say no to this stupidity. And it just becomes a bunch of idiotic moments. It just feels like a 13-year-old who watched the first one wrote some kind of script about it, like, oh, we'll put this, funny, raunchy stuff in that. And it's just so bad. I mean, okay, this is a legitimately bad movie. I'm not saying... most of the movies on this list are not bad, but this is definitely a bad one.
Interesting. Yeah, weird, but again, I kind of slightly disagree with you on this one. I'm not going to put up too much of a defense on this one because it ultimately isn't that great. But this, of the Harold and Kumars, either this or White Castle was probably my favorite. The 3D one was... to me, objectively the worst. But yeah, I found quite a few moments of this one funny, and I found certain elements of the comedy that again is ridiculous, but a little bit of the ante was upped from the last one because of the whole Guantanamo Bay and then meeting Bush. To me, that was a pretty funny segment, and I don't know, like, I don't completely agree with this one, but this is definitely one of the cases where it's like, come on, it's like a comedy where they're being stupid and they probably just cut some corners. So, and this is another example, I will say, kind of like The Hangover, which I find to be a very overrated comedy series, where it's... no, but seriously, that's what I define the genre of comedy that to me sucks. They can't just let you sit with the fact that they did something super shady and shitty, but they're like, no, but let's teach a moral after this. And it's like, no, that is so bad. Stop doing that. Like, if it works...
Copping out.
Yes, it is copping out at its worst, and you can't do that in comedy and still be like, expected to be, this comedy god to me. So this is an example where that did happen, and I face-palmed when it did happen at the end, but... Other than that, I actually kind of found it to be pretty funny. So I don't completely agree with this one, and again with the ranking, but definitely a lighter critique on this one than even the prior two. So
I mean, the thing also in addition, when he like stops that guy, he like punches that one groom in like the crotch, and he just lays there down. Like, is this a dream sequence? Because this doesn't feel like it feels like this is a dream that this wouldn't realistically happen. But no, it's actually happening.
right.
I mean, that's how bad I felt like the writing for this movie was. In a way, like I actually think the first one, Harold and Kumar movie, I actually think it's pretty good, pretty funny. This I actually consider the worst of them, and the Christmas one was in that. But yeah, there's so many dumb moments in this thing, and on top of that, it came out during the writer strike era of film, so maybe that possibly played a hand into that.
It might have, yeah.
Okay, again, more surprise twist, Stephen, here. Didn't know you'd be defending this one. Alright, so number one is actually a tie between X-Men The Last Stand and X-Men Origins Wolverine. I felt like both these movies easily could have killed the X-Men franchise, because the first two X-Men movies were pretty good. And then when The Last Stand was like, okay, it starts out pretty good, where we see a younger looking Charles Xavier and Eric, I forget his last name, it doesn't call it Professor X Magneto. And basically they're trying to recruit Jean Grey when she's a kid. And then we see this really like sad moment where Angel is trying to like clip off his wings when he's a kid because he doesn't want his father to find out. And then the movie goes downhill because it's like, okay, we're being all serious, all this death here, but we're gonna go like all funny and campy like stuff where it's like, make up your mind. You're gonna make a goof fest, or are you gonna be all dark and depressing here? Which shows why Brett Ratner was such a wrong choice for this. By the way, he directed, Hercules with Dwayne The Rock Johnson in that. So 2 times on this list already, or 1.5 if you're thinking this is a half on the list.
Right.
But anyway, and also like, okay, it's one thing to mess up one storyline from the comics with the whole like cure for mutants. But it's another thing to mess up the Dark Phoenix story arc. Because, okay, the Dark Phoenix in the comics, and even in the 90s animated series, was like, okay, it's just a spirit that possessed Jean Grey with the M'Kraan crystal. This one made it like a Jekyll and Hyde split personality.
Yeah.
In fact, even at the end of the second one, they show a hint at the Phoenix, like the outline of it. It obviously showed Bryan Singer had a much different idea than what Brett Ratner had. Kind of like how J.J. Abrams had a much different idea of what he wanted to do with the Star Wars movies after the 7th one than what Rian Johnson had in mind.
For sure.
And then with X-Men Origins Wolverine, it's kind of like, okay, we pretty much have this cool like opening credit sequence where we show him and his brother kind of fighting in different wars. And then the movie goes downhill with, basically being a very cliche action flick.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, people talk about how bad they butchered Deadpool. Like, he does look more like Baraka from Mortal Kombat with the bald head and the blades come out his wrists. But I felt like what was worse than that was the CGI Wolverine blades that look like they should belong in, like, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, how cartoony they look. I mean, the ones in the 90s animated series of Wolverine's claws look more realistic than these. I mean, this did not look polished at all. Like, the other films had, prop real, like, Wolverine claws, and they looked good. They looked real. And they go CG for no reason whatsoever. It's just so bad. You're telling me nobody reviewed this footage whatsoever? And that it just is so bad. And thank God they decided not to do this and just stick with the practical effects as much as possible after this one.
Yeah. No, I strongly agree with both of these picks. These were definite negative bombs, and they could have easily brought about an end to the X-Men, especially in the case of Origins Wolverine. I feel that The Last Stand, there's more of an argument of, well, up until maybe a little before halfway it was doing all right, but then kind of just, sandbagged overall. And overall, I mean, I think I still found okay how Wolverine ended up killing Jean, and,
they got that right.
That, to me, they got right, but pretty much everything else, I agree, was pretty subpar, and especially the handling of the situation with this campiness to it. I agree, it just didn't work. It was an early stage example of how can Marvel get it wrong? And again, I know this is a Fox property, not to, say that
Well,
we
film
can
rights.
blame Marvel for this case, but it's an example in superhero movies of like, how can we tonally just shit on a movie? And this definitely is an example of that. And
Thank God for X-Men First Class.
amen. Talk about First Class. This is First Class X-Men. Yeah, definitely much better than
An underappreciated movie.
absolutely. I would say out of like these, this first wave of X-Men movies, X2 was the best probably. No, I was about to say The Last Stand.
No.
Not The Last Stand, X2. Period. But the talking about Origins Wolverine, I definitely agree. The one thing is, I'm not actually sure if I remember the claws that well. He's probably right about him, but that I didn't notice too well. But what they did to Deadpool was a disaster, and even other characters, and having like a member of the Black Eyed Peas
Yeah,
be
and
a hero.
acting.
Cringe. But
They haven't stopped with it. Rihanna is in Ocean's 8. You didn't learn your lesson from Battleship or Valeridian, the City of a Thousand
Valerian.
Planets?
yeah, it's just so bad. But
He can't act. He's not as bad as Common. I would say like Common is just like you're stiffer than a corpse here.
I found Common at least okay. Like, no, you're right. I think they're overall about equal in
You
terms
should
of
watch
their stiffness. But-
Terminator Salvation again. How he
Yeah,
was
I guess I
stiffer
should,
than Terry Crews' dead corpse in that film. So how come Terry Crews is a dead body? He's a much better actor, but Common has acting lines and that, and it's just so stiff. It's kind of like 10 minutes of acting lessons could help right now.
Right. 5 minutes even. But like, yeah, I agree. And actually my friend, talking about Origins real quick, I agree with Tyler that the beginning was actually decent of this, and it made it seem like it was going to have some promise until, especially in like how it looked in the beginning. Like the cinematography in the beginning looked well thought out, and then it quickly just didn't work. So that was a clear example of a disappointing, superhero movie of the time. And actually, my friend Josh, I'll have to give a shout out to his channel at one point because I always forget his name because it's kind of long and abstract, his channel. But he actually has a cut of the movie that he edited with a bunch of funny things in it that was from the
Leaked one?
the leaked behind the scenes, so with no special effects added. And it is so much better and like hilarious just what he did with it. That really needs to be put out because it would be a service to the world to just show.
He should send that to us.
Absolutely, because that is just it is so much better and hilarious what it does.
Kind of like the defeminized cut of The Last Jedi.
Absolutely, yep,
Yeah, it's like
Definitely.
half the length of the film, but much better.
yep.
As soon as they cut out flying Leia, I'm like, this is better
Mhm.
automatically. But
But
yeah,
But with those prior 3 disagreements, I'm glad that these 2 are like firm. Yes, this is the perfect examples of how to, trip in the first step and eat shit. Like,
yeah. I mean, I don't think Dark of the Moon is a bad movie or The Omen's necessarily a bad movie. I mean, I'm trying to remember if I said it was a bad movie. Maybe I flip-flopped on it, I don't know. But basically, yeah, I think Harold and Kumar's Escape Guantanamo Bay is pretty bad, and
Sure.
these are both bad movies at the least. I mean,
Okay,
I do think
yeah.
The Last Stand is worse, because the first 2 were good, and this one was a big disappointment. So when X-Men Origins Wolverine was a disappointment, it was like, okay, it was disappointing, but it wasn't as painful
I
as
actually,
this one.
yeah, on that, I think we're a little flipped, but I think that, like, The Last Stand was kind of just mediocre, falling into mediocrity from the second one, while Origins was just, first few minutes good, and then face plants for the rest of the time. So
Yeah, no.
interesting.
And on top of that, The Last Stand had like at least 60% second weekend drop from its first week.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just one of the biggest, I think it might be the biggest like second weekend drop for a comic book superhero movie,
Wow.
which is pretty bad. I remember when everyone made a big deal like, oh, look how bad, Batman vs. Superman percentage second weekend dropped, but no one made a big deal about, Captain America Civil War's, second weekend dropped.
Mm-hmm.
And that,
People are hypocrites about that sort of thing. They just like to toot their own horn.
yeah, whoever fits their own agenda in that, which we see way too many times nowadays.
Way too many.
Yeah.
Yep.
So this is Tyler from Men Critter Reviews.
And Steven from Steven Lawson Studios.
And we hope you enjoyed this episode of After the Credits on Men Critter Reviews, and we hope to make a lot more in the future. Please like and subscribe, and maybe we'll do more like commentary stuff in the future. We're hoping to do more of that stuff. And I'll probably do like maybe another top 10 in the future of, well, probably next year whenever Oscar season comes around, where I'll probably describe the most overrated Best Picture movies ever made.
Absolutely. Yeah, that sounds like fun.
Yeah.
So.
Probably won't be disagreeing as much with this one in a way. It was kind of like a versus match for a bit. Yeah. All right. Please like and subscribe.